And now you have a situation where is court storming going to go away for good? Should it go away for good? For those that didn't see, we'll run a clip here of the Wake Forest incident with Duke over the weekend. Kyle Flipowski, in a unique situation where you can't really blame him. I know what you're going to say, Elliot. He kind of looked like he was going for the shove slash trip.
He did look like he was going for a push.
What about the trip? Play this one more time. I want you to see. I don't know if you can see it, but look at the. It looks like a. It looks more or less like. Maybe not. I take that back.
In real time, it doesn't look like that.
Yeah, you could take and you know what? Anybody can take a picture and make it look like there was some perception of somebody trying to trip somebody or whatever may happen. But here's the thing with the court storming. This is the nuts and bolts of it all. You certainly don't want guys that are playing in a game getting hurt from people on the outside that are trying to, for lack of a better term, party in the middle of the floor. However, there is something that is, I don't want to say nostalgic. That's not the right word to use. But there is something that is fun about a court storming. How do you find a world where both can exist? I don't know if it's possible. It certainly seems as if now we're on the side. We'll make it our chat poll question of the day. Should court storming be banned? I think it can get banned like that. Relatively simple. I know me and Elliot was kind of saying, how do you stop him? How do you stop him? Well, you stop him from making some obscene fine. You start basically arresting anybody that goes on the floor. And yeah, if you have everybody that does it, then certainly without question it's going to be a lot harder to enforce those rules. But when you start enforcing it on the select few that you can get your hands on, then it becomes a little less enticing for the student in themselves to want to run on the floor because they think they might have the chance of getting this crazy fine and getting in trouble for it. It all comes down to player injury. If you did not see it, there's these comments by John Shire in this post-game press conference about court storming. Here's what he had to say, and we'll get into it right after this.
Disappointed we lost, but look, for me, I'm more concerned about the well-being of our guys. You know, Flip sprains his ankle. When are we going to ban court storming? Like, when are we going to ban that? Like, how many times does a player have to get into something where they get punched or they get pushed or they get taunted right in their face? And it's a dangerous thing. And I don't want that to take away from the game that Wake played. Because Wake played a big-time game. Salas was as good as could be today, and hats off to them. But you look around the country, and Caitlin Clark, something happens. And now Flip, I don't know what his status is going to be. He sprains his ankle. And it's one thing, like when I played, at least it was 10 seconds in the court, you would storm the court. Now it's the buzzer doesn't even go off, and they're running on the floor. And this has happened to us a bunch this year. It's part of it. I don't want this to take away at all from Wake. They earned it. They deserve the win. Steve is a hell of a coach. I respect the heck out of him and his team. They're really good. And if this is an example that they need to be in the tournament, what are we even talking about? So I'll answer any questions.
All right, so there's no doubt that some of the things that he said has very, very valid merit. And one of those is that there's got to be a timing element to this. If we're going to continue to do the court storming in the future, I'm all for it. The only issue that I have is that the buzzer got to sound. It can't be like 0.2 of a second left. The next thing you know, it's a mad dash on the court. And the other thing is, like, some of this has to go on the onus of the facility maintenance, or whatever term you'd like to use, facility security, on setting up some kind of structure that knows that this is a possibility. This doesn't exist every single game of the regular season. This only happens a handful of times. And you know what games there's an opportunity of this happening for. Certainly Duke's a program that doesn't lose a whole lot on the road. Is certainly within that league for a long, long period of time. And therefore you have a program that has not had a lot of success in basketball for quite some time. There's your recipe right there. But it seems like we can have the best of both worlds. And I don't know, would it take away, Elliot, if we just said, hey, you're allowed to storm the court, no problem. You got 10 seconds. And the other part of this that I want to say is I would venture to suggest that if the game's out of hand to where you know you're going to get beat and there's whatever, how many seconds left, at what point do the coaches start to have the unwritten rules of calling a timeout and essentially allowing them to get themselves out of the way? And what I mean by that is if you know, hey, we're getting ready to beat Duke, there's 15 seconds left. Now, a buzzer beater, you can't do this. But my point is if you're down by 10 or down by 8 and there's 20 seconds left and they're walking the ball up the floor, you call a quick timeout, you sub the guys out, all the players are standing on the sideline, you inbound the ball and you stand there for 10 seconds. Boom, that's the end of it. You storm the courts. The players obviously get protected and they walk off the floor. Now, I got to say, we've talked a lot about all this. And the easiest solution that there is, Elliot, is the one that you don't want, which is just make it to where you don't do it.
It won't happen though, and that's my point. You and I were talking about this outside of the studio today. I don't think there's really a world where it happens. I think you can certainly do something where you know what, if your team doesn't get to make the tournament this year if you storm the court, and you can issue stuff like that. I'd argue that schools would obviously push against it because what school can really stop a bunch of drunk college kids after you beat Duke? And I get John Shire's point too, because when you're Duke and you're top 10, top 15 every year, every single team that beats you on their home floor is going to storm the court, pretty much no matter what. So I get the frustration with him personally, being a blue blood and having to deal with court stormings all year long anytime you lose on the road. But I think court storming, like you talk about what's happened in college sports over the past couple of years here with NIL and all this stuff, and how it's becoming like a semi-professional thing and yada yada yada. I think court storming does somewhat keep that magic in college sports. I think it's fun. I think 99.9% of times nobody gets hurt like what just happened here. I think if you're gonna do what they did and injure a player, that's when fines should happen. That's when serious repercussions should be issued, handed out. But that doesn't happen every time. I think there will be cases going forward where, like what you said, they're going to call timeouts, and the last 5 seconds of the game is just going to be dribbling out the clock with nobody on the court. I think that's coming. I think, and again, the ACC not having a set fine for, like every other league, I'm pretty sure, most of them, out of the power schools, whatever, Power 7 schools, whatever there is in college basketball, out of all those schools, the ACC, that's the only conference that doesn't issue fines for any court storming whatsoever. Big Ten, I think, issues a $100,000 fine after the third court storming. There's different weird nuances amongst college basketball, but saying all that, you're not going to be able to stop a bunch of drunk college kids. The only way to do it is, and I don't think there's a fine that does it. If you say we're going to fine your school $1 million, what's a college kid going to care about their school getting fined?
The only thing that would do is the only thing that the fines will do is it will not make an impact maybe so much on the student as it will the school. So if you tell the school they're going to get fined $1 million, guess what? They're going to have something to protect that $1 million. There's going to be a lot of security guards. There's going to be a lot of people that make sure that no matter who you are, you're not getting to the court, at least on their attempt or their watch.
But but that's where I disagree. That's where I don't think you would have to have legitimately an army of security guards standing by the court to stop it. I don't think that's gonna happen ever, because who's gonna pay all those police officers? Who's gonna pay all those security guards to stop a court storming, which is harmless a majority of the time? And I don't think there's a way you can do it. The only way you can do it is if you issue a tournament ban or a 1-year suspension from the tournament, as something really serious like that, where the fans get affected by it too. Because again, nobody cares about a fine. Nobody cares about the cop if everybody is rushing onto the court at the same time.
I think they can 100% stop it if they truly wanted to stop it. They can stop it. I mean, well.
How are you stop? You legit need an army of police officers. You need an army.
Well, then they'd get an army. I mean, you could stop it. Put it this way: the reason that it looks as if it's so difficult to stop now is because it's not frowned upon. It's not an illegal thing to do.
But
you can say whatever you want, but you can say whatever you want. You might have a couple crazy drunk college kids that think, you know what, I'm doing it anyways. You line the court up with some sheriffs, and I got news for you. The freshman, girl that decided she wanted to come to the game, or the freshman guy that's just hanging out because he's not, it's just Duke's in town. They see those sheriffs, they're not running on the floor. There might be a few that try, but again, it comes down to how many can you handle, how many can you stop. The simplest, most easy thing to do would be, in my opinion, is to try to make it as like it's a part of something that you're doing as a part of the school. Like, hey, we're going to storm the court, and there's some kind of countdown. And then therefore you give yourself maybe 25 to 30 seconds after the court or after the game ends to where you can get yourself in a position where you can kind of barricade the players. That's what this comes down to. You got to barricade the players. If you don't give the players enough time to at least just get to the sideline, then there you go. Kansas State has done this relatively well because they were a team that had an issue with storming the court, and Kansas State's facility team, or whatever, I guess their security, they have ropes. So they would run with the rope down the basically the middle of the court, and as soon as the players got to one side of the rope, they basically just kind of pushed them into the line, and then therefore the players were not in part of the whole entire madness. It only takes one time, Elliot, before the idea of court storming is a real problem. And trust me, if you see, put it this way, if you see, for instance, was a top 2 seed in the tournament, and all of a sudden somebody got injured from a UC perspective, you'd be pissed. So I'm just trying to put you on the other side of the aisle here.
Let me ask you this, because they have, by the way, I mentioned the ACC doesn't have fines. A lot of the other conferences do have fines. SEC, if you're court storming,
yes,
they're fining your school $100,000.
Right.
Is that not incentive enough for the school to stop it or want to stop it? $100,000 fine? And if the second time they do it, it's $250,000. Is that not enough?
It is enough.
Then why don't they stop it? And the answer is because they can't. You literally can't do it. You can't.
I knew that was going to be your pushback. I see where you were going with that. But how many times has that happened in the SEC? We'll have to do some digging. Is that for football or for basketball?
For both. And by the way, and that's the craziest thing. It happens in football too. Mr. Mo brought up the point. They court storm in football. They field storm in football.
Goalpost away.
They vandalize the school, take the goalpost out into the creek, and throw it in there. It might be worse in football. This discussion will happen every single time there's a rare instance where one player on the opposing team gets hit by a fan that's storming on the court, and that's wrong. It's 100% wrong. But I don't see a reasonable way to stop it unless the fans are somehow punished along with the school, that they care. And I don't think you can do it. I don't think the governing body that is the NCAA can convince the conferences, the schools.
It seems like
that you're going to get a tournament ban for doing it. It's not going to happen. So court storming is never going to be stopped.
You don't think if they said that as the university, if they came out and they said there was a public announcement at the university that said for every student that storms the court, it's going to be a call it a $5,000 personal fine to your student bill.
How are you going to catch them? How are you going to catch them?
I mean,
there's 200 kids that rush the court. How are you stopping
face recognition, man? There's
face recognition.
I mean, you don't think cameras could
They're not doing a January 6 on these college kids.
They do not care this much, and that's my point.
If they wanted to stop it, they could, is what I'm saying. That's my point.
Sure. You can line up an army down by the sideline, and you could stop it if you want. But guess what? It will never, ever, ever happen anytime ever.
I think the bigger reason as to why schools don't care is because they also it's a good look for the student body, and it's a good look for all
100%.
It's a marketing tactic more than anything.
100%.
But if they wanted to stop it, they could stop it.
And again, there's a couple schools: Kentucky, Duke, North Carolina, Villanova. There's a couple blue bloods out there that when this happens to you, I get their frustration 100% of the time. But to everybody else in collegiate basketball, there's like 350 teams that aren't blue bloods. For those schools, it's fun. It brings back the college, whatever you want to call it, nostalgia. I think there's a magic to college sports, nothing more magical than a court storming. It won't happen in NBA or in NFL games, but in college games, it happens, and it's fun. Casey, I sent you a clip of Tom Izzo. Tom Izzo weighed in on it, and he laughed because it's funny. It's something. It's nonsense to try to ban it because it's part of the fun. And do we have the clip?
Sorry, I wanted to pull this up.
Oh, you're good. Go ahead.
I wanted to show a little example of what would happen.
Yeah, here's the security. Oh, Casey, please show this.
So you're going to suggest
security.
You're going to suggest
this is
to
the
me
security that this is the security that Trace.
I mean, look at him. Just take it out, chick. Like, come on.
You're going to suggest to me, first of all, it's a lost cause.
This is Trace's army. This is what he wants to stop it. Oh, Casey, that was so good.
No, now listen, for those that are listening to the podcast form, no, Casey, don't do it again. No. The truth is that's not a very good, well-executed plan. That's like showing UC's offense. That's like showing UC's offense to a group of middle schoolers, and then them thinking to themselves that it's impossible to score the basketball.
This is what you need. This is how you need to defend your argument. So the team needs just a official police escort. If they would play. There we go. They just need a police escort. Boom! Stiff arm. Look at that. Get out of here.
Oh, yeah.
We'll get you out of here. That's what they need. Bodyguards.
Maybe so. I mean, listen, I'm not against court storming.
You definitely
are. No, I'm not. I'm not against it. You're the one that suggested something that I wholeheartedly don't believe in, which is that if the universities wanted to stop it, they wouldn't be able to stop it anyways. That seems crazy.
How are they stopping it?
They stop it the same way they stop
with that security guard that Casey just showed you. Are they going to stop it with that guy? That guy's not stopping anybody, Trace. And I'll tell you what, get 15 of those fat guys, and they're still not going to be able to stop them.
Trace, you know 100% that they can't, because you have actually dealt with police at the Bearcat Bash. Those guys are not stopping a whole drunk fan base. They're not.
What a point.
They're not.
You can't do it. And even if you could do it, how bad of a look is it to have an army, legit 50, because that's what it would take, maybe more, maybe 75 police officers. 75 police officers down on the court trying to stop a bunch of kids having fun. That's what we're really doing.
Those officers had a family.
For the one bad egg that took a stiff arm from Filipowski, that one kid is now the subject of this whole conversation.